Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 5 now of the Memorial Memo KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast. Katie, this is our biggest episode to date. I know it's a very brief history. It is still, again, our biggest episode so far. Katie, before we get into everything there is to talk about, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's definitely a great day here in Lexington, coming off a couple Cats wins. And I'm just excited to talk about what we have to talk about today.
Right. So, Katie, let's get into it. Very big news. 2025 five-star wing Kaylin Carroll announced her commitment to Kentucky. She committed to Kentucky over the likes of Villanova, Minnesota, Florida State, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech. Katie, you get a recruit over North Carolina and South Carolina and North Carolina. Those are two very good programs. But getting a recruit over South Carolina, now, they entered very late into the mix for Kaylin. They entered her, I think, in like late August is when they offered her, and I just don't think Dawn Staley was really able to catch back up. But clearly, I talked to Kaylin back in the summer at Run for Roses. I think she's always been very high on what Kenny Brooks can do. I think she's the perfect fit for the offense, which we'll talk about later during our KS Board questions. But Katie, just awesome commit. Finally, we have a commit in the 2025 class. Number 15 player, according to ESPN, in the 25 class, which, by the way, that makes her our biggest commit now in over a decade, Katie. Just how awesome is that?
It's so awesome to finally have a commit and be getting the ball rolling in that way. I'm just really excited to see where this goes. She's such a great player, and for her to commit to Kentucky before Kentucky has even proved themselves in any way is just so huge.
Right. I actually do think that's really impressive to note because I thought I kind of thought to myself, maybe we don't get anybody in 25 just because there hasn't been nothing there. But Katie, you clearly get Carroll. Sources indicated to me that Minnesota was a school that pushed for her very hard, and I think they thought they're going to get her. They're she did an official visit there. They've been in the running for a while. Close but no cigar. Sorry there, Golden Gophers. But, I think just thinking about what Carroll is going to bring, first of all, that's one less thing Kentucky has to worry about now in the transfer portal. But, I think besides who have to leave, I think they're expecting to bring basically everyone back. So that makes it 11 players you'd already have for next year. But the reality of the situation, though, Katie, is that you're probably not going to bring everyone back. And it's not because, I'm not hearing that someone's going to transfer out. I'm not saying that I believe that X player is going to leave, but it's just in the modern day of what the sport is, I would be surprised if you actually are able to retain everyone. And if you are, that's awesome. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one of the freshmen or someone who's not getting a tons playing time this season leaves. Well, Kaylin is an excellent addition to bring in 6'2" wing there.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on the retainment because it is hard to keep an entire roster, especially in this world of NIL. Schools can offer you more money and playing time, and you might not be getting that here. And so I think being able to have Kaylin as not even a backup, she might be. She's really good, so she might get consistent time as a freshman. But just to have a freshman at her caliber that can replace someone who might not want to stick around is just so huge.
Right. And Katie, the buzz around Lexington right now is amazing. I've talked to some people on the national level too who are like, dude, Kaylin's pretty freaking good. Like, she's as good as it gets. And I got a glimpse of it. When I watched Kaylin at Run for Roses, she didn't even have a great game. I would almost say she had a bad outing. And like, her shot wasn't falling. But Katie, the way she impacts the game, I'm really excited to see what she can do. And the great thing about it, there's one more person in 2025, Agat McKeer, who Kentucky is still in contention for. I'm not saying she's not coming here because I don't know for certain, but I don't think she is. I would imagine she's going to UConn or South Carolina or somewhere like that. Could be wrong, but I just don't anticipate Agat coming here. But Katie, in the 26th class, Madden Greenway, 4-star point guard. Of course, she's ranked as like the third best point guard. I saw her play. She had an amazing game. I think she's the best point guard in the 26th class, and that's just me. But, she could be someone who commits soon.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Kaylin play in person yet, so hopefully I get to do that at some point soon. But yeah, I mean, Madden is also very impressive for being so young. I mean, she's only going to get better, and I think that what Kenny has shown is that he's able to develop players in such a successful way. I mean, we think of Clara Strack all the time, who went from getting no playing time to starting in just a few days. I mean, like, I think that if you're a player really looking to get developed, you probably want to choose Kentucky. If you're a player that's already really good and you don't want to change your play, maybe you go to a UConn, maybe you go somewhere else. But I think again, like Madden would be such a great gift for Kentucky.
Right. And of course, Katie, just talking about Kaylin again, just super versatile. 6'2". I've had a decent number of people ask, is she going to be, kind of down in the post, banging down low, or is she going to be, on the perimeter, kind of playing as a guard more like? Katie, I think she can do a little of both. I think she's number 15 in the class. Obviously, she's an excellent player. She's going to bring talent to Lexington that we haven't seen in a very long time. She can shoot the three. She can, like I said, she can bang down low in the post if she has to. Katie, just super, super exciting to land Kaylin Carroll.
Yeah, I mean, she's tall, she's pretty quick, and she's strong, and so being able to have that kind of flex 3-4 player is very important, especially when you're playing teams in the SEC that are very physical. I think that her being in this roster is just gonna be so helpful and such, like, an important piece to the puzzle.
And now, Katie, the last time we recorded, 2 games happened. You had Northern Kentucky, and then you had Wofford. We'll talk about Northern Kentucky first. So the Norse, they come to Lexington. They lose 70-41. Katie, Kentucky comes out of the gates in that game, and it's kind of slow. I think, Northern Kentucky, they're projected, I believe, they're projected to finish very low in the Horizon League. I can't remember the exact numbers now. Maybe 7th out of 8th, something like just very low in their league. But I think under Coach Jeff Hands, they're going to be improved. They're going to be a pretty good mid-major team. They're going to be a team to keep an eye on. And, besides Kentucky and Louisville, probably the best team here in the state of Kentucky. Just a very good team overall. Mm-hmm. But still, even after you come out sloppy, you get the 29-point win.
I think that Kentucky struggled a little bit defensively towards the beginning. Again, like they came out in the second half and they played 10 times better than they played in the first. So I feel like it's one of those games that you go in knowing that you're going to win, and so you don't really try as hard as you probably should. I mean, I think that Kentucky did a pretty decent job. I mean, 30 of 69 from the field isn't great, but it's okay. I mean, they're getting shots up. They're taking open looks, 5 of 25 from 3. Again, not great. It's about 20%, but at least they're making open – I mean, I don't know. It just wasn't that great of a game to me, but I think that there's a lot of room for improvement, and they definitely ironed that out.
Yeah, and I think even though, like you said, it wasn't a great game, you still won by 29. It's not like you didn't play great and it's a 5-point game. Just pointing out some individual performances here. Clara Silva led the way with 18 points, 5 blocks, and 4 rebounds. She actually leads the nation, or actually I haven't double-checked since that third game, but at least after these last 2 games, she led the nation with 5.5 blocks a game. And, she's just playing really well right now. Claire Strack, 15 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists away from a triple-double. She had 8 assists and 4 blocks. Katie, just between those two, Clara and Clara, we call it, a Clara connection. I've seen it on the internet. I like that name. Those two, I feel like just when I look around the landscape of college basketball, and it's probably not going to happen this season. I'll say it almost certainly won't. But Katie, next year or the year after, I feel like those two are going to make up for the best front court in college basketball.
Oh, definitely. I think if they stick with each other, just the chemistry that they already have and the way that they communicate with each other is unlike anything that I have seen. I think that we've seen a lot of – I think I talked about this at the NKU game, at the Wofford game, and just seeing how Clara will pass to Clara in the paint, and it goes in, or vice versa. Clara passes to Clara. Like, they're constantly looking for each other when they're in the game together. And I think that's so important because they're not playing selfish basketball and they know that the other one is going to make a shot. It doesn't matter.
Right. And I also want to point out Georgia Amore. She hasn't come out and scored 20, 30 points yet like we think she could, or like we know she could. But she did have 13 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. And how about 3 blocks for 5'6" Georgia Amore?
I mean, yeah, I remember we asked Kenny about it in the press conference, and he said, "Oh, she's definitely in the locker room bragging about that right now because that's not common for her." I think that just is one of those stats that probably shouldn't exist and probably will never exist again, but just getting to see her maybe not produce points-wise, but in other ways defensively, and, how many assists did she have? 8 assists. I mean, she's just such a great player. She's a smart player. She can read the ball very, very well, and I think that even though we haven't seen a lot from her scoring-wise, I'm not worried about the way that she's gonna perform for the rest of the season.
Right. Now, Katie, after that, we had the Wofford Terriers who came into the house, 76-42 win for Kentucky. Now, unlike the Northern Kentucky game, Kentucky came out firing, and specifically Deja Lawrence came out firing. She had 15 points at the end of the first quarter, finished with 19 total. She shot 6 of 9 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. Katie, I think at the that Northern Kentucky game, she had 0 points at the end of the first half, finished with 10. And I think that momentum she had from the second half carried over into this game. What a game from Deja Lawrence.
I mean, and it was so great to see compared to how she performed against NKU. I think she only had about 10 points, but those came very slowly. So to see her come into the game on Tuesday and just or yeah, Tuesday, and just know exactly what she needed to do, and she did her job as she should. Scoring 15 points right off the bat makes you a threat, and I think that a lot of people saw that yesterday. I think that just she's going to be a player that people are going to start looking out for because she finally found her rhythm.
Yeah. Okay. It's just really nice because, Deja, I mean, it's no secret. Kenny wants her to be not the leader, but a leader for this team. And, when I get there super early for these games, probably earlier than I should, but I just noticed in pregame warmups, Deja's the vocal leader. I would say she is the vocal leader over Georgia. She's the one saying, let's go, or, clapping, celebrating. Deja's the one who's getting the rally started. How about Claire Strack again? 16 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks. Katie, we said it last night in a rapid reaction. I'm going to say it again now. She's been the MVP through these first 3 games.
Yeah, definitely. I think watching the game, maybe she didn't look like she played that well. I mean, she did have 6 turnovers, which made up almost half.
That's true. Yeah. That is true, the 6 turnovers. Well, it's, we'll get to it in a minute because I think it was one of our KS board questions that we'll get into later. But there are some weaknesses with this team, and I think it was very evident with Claire Strack last night. But again, I want to save that for in a moment. But something I want to say for now, Tiani Key, 11 points, 13 rebounds, 2 blocks. Katie, in that opening game, she had 14. She has 11 last night, double-double, 11 and 13. She's been not a pleasant surprise because I wouldn't say I'm surprised by the effort she's given in these first 3 games. I'm just very pleasant. It's very nice to have her addition when, especially in transition, Katie, running down the floor, especially whenever you have, some of our bigs who I don't want this to come off the wrong way. Listen, they know what I mean. Just kind of pokey, right? Kind of not taking their time, but it's not the fastest in transition. It's really nice to have Tiani Key who can go coast to coast with it and kind of make some magic happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Tiani Key is kind of one of those players that's pretty easy to overlook because she doesn't play as much as some of the others. She had about 21 minutes last night against Wofford, and in those 21 minutes, 11 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. And I think that she, for one, is just very graceful on the court. I feel like you said, she's able to run coast to coast, and she just looks so content and looks so calm and collected while she's doing it. you would never tell that she might be stressed on the court, about what's going to happen next. What am I supposed to do now? Like, she's never frantic. And I think that that really helps her, just staying relaxed and doing what you have to do and taking the open shot. And, I remember seeing Tiani Key open look from three, and she still passes it into the paint because maybe she's not feeling the most confident in her three. And Clara Strack immediately passes it back out, and she takes the three and she makes it. And I think that something that was very encouraging was just her taking that shot, which it went in, so it paid off.
Right, and of course, it's very nice to have her. Like I said, nice to have her addition. It's very nice to, and I thought it was interesting. You said she doesn't get as much playing time as others, which is a correct statement. But it's funny because she starts. But I think that's also a testament to how deep this team is. And of course, you had Georgia Amore. She didn't have a great night offensively. She did have 11 points, but like her shooting was inefficient, like fairly inefficient. But she still had 7 assists. Katie, I kind of took away. Even if Georgia Amore is not having a great night putting the ball in the hoop, just the threat of what she can do, not only does that allow others to get better, but it kind of just opens things up for herself because then they start to focus on those other players, and that's when she can kind of take advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in the rapid reaction, but the way that she has presented herself last season is she's a threat already. And so the double team is almost automatic. Someone is going to be guarding her very closely, making sure that she cannot get open. And I feel like what we've been seeing is, yeah, they're guarding Georgia very closely, but like you said, they're leaving other teammates open. So I think we'll start seeing a transition of, okay, well, maybe let's back off Georgia because she hasn't been scoring as much as she used to. So maybe she's not as good as she used to be. Maybe people are thinking something like that. And once they start to back off, that's when she's going to slide in and start doing what she does best, which is lead a team and score.
Right. And Katie, after these 2 games, through the first week of college basketball, you see some faces kind of start to make their names known. And this week, that was Clara Silva. Clara Silva was named SEC Freshman of the Week. Now, Katie, we haven't had one of those in a while because I don't remember having one last season. Could be wrong. I don't think we did. Just super impressed with her through these first 2 games, or first 3 games, I guess. But, I think, and the funny part is, I think she can be a lot better. I say this with love. She's a meek and mild freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, just when I watch, I feel like I can see her almost second guess herself, or it's almost like I said in a rapid reaction. She's just thinking. She's thinking a lot, which understandable. You're a freshman, you're going to do that. But, watching her play, rather than just not going through the motions, because that's not a good thing, but, rather than just playing, I think she does a lot of thinking. But still, even then, I mean, incredible first 3 games for Clara Silva.
Yeah, we talked about a little bit about in the rapid reaction, the difference between European basketball and American basketball. And so maybe she's still trying to make that transition. I kind of feel like European basketball, especially FIBA and Portugal, is just a very analytical team, whereas Kenny Brooks obviously wants his team to be pretty physical. And maybe she, like you said, is meek and mild and hasn't really adjusted to being that aggressive. And I think that once she breaks out of her shell and becomes a little bit more confident, we'll be seeing a lot more of that. When you mentioned having your bigs being a little bit pokey running down the court, I feel like that's kind of the way that she is right now. But I think that with time and practice, she will definitely improve on that front.
Right. Now, Katie, we already hit one really big talking point talking about Kaylin Carroll. It's time for our next one. The game that we've been waiting for I have, me personally, because, again, I'm a psychopath, and I love college basketball, and I'm a maniac. I've had this game circled on my calendar for as long as I can remember. I have a brother whose birthday is on this game. I care more about this Louisville game than I do his birthday. Happy early birthday to you, brother. But, Katie, Kentucky, Louisville, November 16th, Historic Memorial Coliseum. It's going to be super, super exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one of the most important things going into this game is having good energy at Memorial Coliseum. So this is my personal plug that if you are going to be in Lexington and you have nothing to do at 6 p.m., make your way to Memorial and come to this game because if Kentucky wants to win, fans have to show out. It just has to happen that way.
Right, and I'm gonna actually. It's funny because I don't know if I like thinking of it this way. I'm gonna do it. I told you last night I was gonna do this. I'm gonna do a little monologue at the end of the show to try to rally people to get to the game. But I love that fans definitely have to be there to get the ball rolling. Katie, Louisville, their only loss this season was to number 5 UCLA in France. Now, Katie, that's a big game. Of course, UCLA. I think they may have even had some injuries, but that's as good as a loss you can have. That's a good loss for Louisville.
Yeah, but I think another thing that I'm picking up looking at these scores is these games haven't really been blowouts. These games against Southern Indiana and UT Martin, teams that you would think a really good team like Louisville could beat by 40 or 50 or whatever. And I don't want to discredit Louisville at all because they are a great team, but I think that it can be a little bit encouraging to see that Louisville isn't beating its opponents by as much as Kentucky maybe was.
Right, and of course, Kenny Brooks, he has a 3-game winning streak against Louisville. I hope that continues Saturday. But, Katie, there's some pretty good players for the Cardinals we have to talk about. Of course, if you're watching on the KSR YouTube channel, you can see on your screen. And if not, of course, you're hearing me talk about them right now. Of course, I'm not the greatest with pronouncing names. Never have been, never will be. But Tajiana Roberts, 15 points per game, shooting 44% from beyond the arc, Katie. She has been, she's a freshman. She is coming into this game, and she is on fire. And I just think it's going to be interesting to see if Kentucky can really hold their own against her.
Yeah, I think what is going to have to be very important for Kentucky is perimeter defense with her. And we haven't seen many three-point shooting threats, if any at all. And so I think this is going to be an interesting test for Kentucky to be able to see if they can defend from beyond the arc.
Right, and then you have forward Olivia Cochran averaging 12.3 points per game and 5.7 rebounds per game. I remember watching her last year against Kentucky. She gave the Cats a lot of trouble. She came in, she was very effective at what she did, and, Kentucky had a lot of trouble guarding her. But, Katie, with more size, I actually feel more confident in Kentucky's ability to compete against Cochran.
Yeah, I agree, because you think about it last year, and the only person that you had that can match up with Cochran was Aisha Petty. Even though she was a talented player, she was basically forced to play the entire game, and that probably hurt Kentucky's productivity, especially in the paint. So I think that by having more than 3 or 4 bigs to take over Cochran and hopefully can keep her from becoming a threat is going to help them a lot.
Then there's forward Nyla Harris. She averages 10.3 points per game and 3 rebounds per game. I caught a little bit of Louisville's game against UCLA. I didn't catch their last 2 games. I'm sure I will be. I'm sure I'll crack down on some film, heading into Saturday. But, Katie, I actually really liked maybe not liked for us, but I thought Nyla Harris, I thought she brought a lot to the table. I think 10.3 points per game is kind of underselling kind of how much of an impact she makes, but she's definitely a name that Kenny Brooks is going to have to circle on the scouting report.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of the same thing as Cochran, just being able to have the depth to hopefully keep these forwards from becoming issues for Kentucky and maybe causing Louisville runs that Kentucky has been having trouble coming out of. I think that is going to be very helpful, especially because she's not averaging a crazy amount of points or rebounds per game. So I don't feel like she's going to be as big of an issue, but I also feel like she's due for a big game, and it could very well be Saturday.
And then you have Jalea Williams, who, 8 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists per game. She's been pretty consistent. She kind of brings just, she brings another, again, she kind of reminds me of Tiani Key in a way that, she's just a really nice addition to a really good team.
Yeah, definitely. I can't say that I know much about her, but I think from what I have seen, she is a good player, and again, someone that Kentucky's going to have to look out for defensively.
And I also want to point out freshman Amari Berry. Now, for Kentucky fans, that name might sound familiar because when Kenny Brooks first got here, she decommitted from Clemson. And, of course, she was available again on the board again, and Kentucky went after her. Kentucky and Louisville. I think it was Kentucky, Louisville, and maybe another school were like the finalists for her. Of course, she ends up picking the Cardinals. I was actually at a UK baseball game, and I think it was like Tennessee series, and I think it was like the Tennessee series, and there was no service, and I kind of saw that when I got horrible. I remember that was just not fun. But my point is, Amari Berry, she's a name that we should know. She was, I think, top 15, kind of like Caitlin Carroll, top 15 freshman, 5.3 points per game, a team high 6.7 rebounds per game. Amari Berry, that's going to be a name for Kentucky to keep an eye out for as well.
Yeah, I think just knowing that she's a freshman, we haven't seen a lot of. She doesn't play as much as her teammates. I think she averages a little less than 20 minutes per game, so she shouldn't become a huge threat, but also knowing that she leads her team in rebounds in less than 20 minutes per game is pretty scary to think about, because that means she's down in the post and she's battling and she's getting those rebounds over players that she probably shouldn't.
Right. Now, Katie, as far as I know, we have some KS board questions. So thank you once again to everybody who contributed, everybody who asked the questions, and keep us engaged. Keep yourselves engaged too. So Katie, go ahead, fire off these questions for us.
Yeah, so in the Kaylin Carroll thread, Digger808 asked, what is something that Carroll can bring that the current roster is lacking? Is she good enough to be a plug-and-play rotational bench player or even a starter her freshman year? Or will she be a reserve 5 to 10 minute per game, 8th player off the bench like Blue has been so far?
Kind of depends what the roster looks like next year, obviously. But I think Kaylin is good enough to be a starter. I honestly thought Lexi Blue was, but I think obviously Kenny just wants more experience. And, that honestly may be the way it is next season too. You may just want more experience in the starting lineup. But she's going to play, I would say, I know it's easier to compare her to Lexi because their positions are more similar. But Katie, I think almost in a way like Clara Silva, she may be your sixth man. She may be the person who comes off the first person off the bench. But Kaylin Carroll is definitely someone who's going to be in the rotation and be very important to next year's team.
Yeah, especially because we'll probably be seeing some older veteran players coming in from the transfer portal if Kenny decides to go that route. So I wouldn't be shocked if she doesn't start, but yeah, 6th or 7th off the bench, or 1st or 2nd off the bench, 6th or 7th man makes sense to me. Okay, so Anonymous, a bunch of numbers, asked, how do you think we match up with Louisville this week?
I actually think Kentucky, and this is going to sound really weird because it's kind of like I like to say, like if you followed the men's basketball program for all these years, you're not used to hearing people say Kentucky has the experience advantage. But here in this case on the women's basketball side, and specifically against Louisville, Kentucky has the experience advantage. Louisville has a lot of freshmen. To be fair, a very loaded freshman class, very talented freshman class. But Kentucky definitely has the experience advantage there. But it's going to be mano a mano. It's going to be a rock fight. I don't see Louisville winning by 20. I don't see Kentucky winning by 20. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to be a 5-point game with 2 minutes to go, and it's going to be who's going to go get buckets in the end.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about when Zakaya was announcing her commitment and why or why not she should choose Louisville. And I remember us talking a little bit about Louisville's kind of coming out of their dominant era, the era of their team that was just winning everything. And I think that, that's really good for Kentucky because we're entering this new era and they're kind of exiting an old era. So I almost feel like we have a really good chance, and then to have the home court advantage is going to be really helpful.
Right.
So Digger808 had another question.
Okay.
Asked, does Kenny Brook plan to have Silva develop her game to be a more physical center like Betts or Cardoso? She plays more with finesse, and her fadeaway is great, but she looked a little uncomfortable with the physical play against Wofford, and that was against players half a foot shorter. Will she be able to match up physically with other SEC centers who are 6'4", 6'6", and are more physical in the post?
Great question. That's obviously the main concern with Silva right now. I talked to Josh Peterson right before the season started, and he was telling me that's kind of what he said. He was like, she's a finesse center, and we're working on getting her more physical. I think that's going to take time. That's just part of her being a freshman. We'll see how she fares in SEC play. Uh, she's super talented, super tall, so that definitely helps. But Katie, she's gonna have to pick up on the physicality part of the game, and I don't see why she can't do that.
Yeah, I feel like definitely when the stakes are higher, we'll see a different Clara. I feel like these have been her warm-up games. These have been the games to kind of get her into American basketball, and now the stakes are real, and it's becoming more and more important that she plays good. So I think that when she breaks out of her shell, we'll be seeing a completely different Clara.
Right.
So Drew Franklin had a question. He said, first of all, he said he hasn't been able to see more than the first quarter of each game. So he's
Busy guy. Drew's a busy guy. We'll give him a pass on that until Saturday. He's got to catch some of the Saturday game.
He said, even though they were all blowouts, did the early opponents expose any weaknesses?
Okay, so yeah, this is what I wanted to say for later because yes, I do think there are some significant weaknesses that I think are worthy talking about. Number one, we talked about Claire Strack. She had 6 turnovers the other day against Wofford. She's something about just whenever we feed the ball down low. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just because it's like our first few games and we're just now playing live. But there seems to be an issue with whenever we get the ball down low, we don't know how to combat double teams. These smaller forwards or smaller guards coming or swatting in there like a bunch of children, and they're getting the ball and they're creating havoc. Well, Katie, we got to find a way. And I'm not a coach. I wouldn't know the schemes to even negate that necessarily. But you got to find a way to whenever you feed the ball down low, whether it's holding the ball up high, you're 6'7", don't let them grab it, or whatever it is, you got to find a way to negate these double teams.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the putting the ball just at your stomach, like hoping that you can protect it, and then it just slips from your fingers and you can't do anything about it because you're not having that strong posture that you need to be having. One thing that I've been noticing is Kentucky's getting beat a lot on hustle plays. I think that defense isn't really an issue, but the loose ball hustle plays have been a problem. I think a lot of Clara's turnovers, if you remember, came from loose balls, just her not being able to hold on to the ball and it getting swatted out of her hands and then getting beat to that ball. So again, this is one of those things where I think when the stakes are higher, Kentucky might be more willing and able to hustle a little bit harder for those balls on the floor, but I don't know. It's just something that I feel like they might need to work on.
And I have to admit, I don't know if that's something I noticed, but I find it interesting. So why do you think that is, Katie? Like, obviously they're giving effort. I think that's clear. But, what would you say is the reason for that, maybe getting beat on loose balls here and there?
I almost think that it's just because you're up by 30, 40 points that you're tired and you don't want to make an effort, because I totally understand that. If you know you're going to win a game, why would you risk maybe an injury or, exert more energy than you really feel like you have to? Especially because I think I saw this a lot more against Wofford. Playing a team that was as scrappy as them, it's obviously going to be happening more. Georgia Amor was literally rolling on the floor chasing after a ball right in front of us. And, she hustled really hard, but I don't think that she kept possession of the ball. I think that Wofford got a hold of it because they were very scrappy. And I don't know. I kind of just feel like Kentucky isn't a scrappy team, so they're not really used to chasing after balls.
Right, and I think that's pretty important too, because you get to Saturday or you get to these teams where it's going to be a tighter game than 29 points or whatever. It's going to be really close, and it may come down to one loose ball here or there to determine who wins the game.
Yeah, I agree with that definitely. Me Too asked, I'm sure you'll cover this in your preview, but are there any specific Louisville players that you see as struggling or to defend or score on?
Struggling to defend, not necessarily. Like, I don't see when I look. Louisville has a ton. We just went over them. We have a ton of they have a ton of talented players who are all definitely going to be a headache in their own unique way. But I don't know if there's someone that I look at. Maybe Roberts, just because of
Mhm.
how well she's done heading into this game. But I don't know if there's anyone that I'm like scared of looking at this Louisville team.
Yeah, I agree with Roberts. I mean, she was ACC Player of the Week this week, or ACC Rookie of the Week. So, um, she's impressive, and she's gonna have to be defended hard. But yeah, I'm not feeling scared of any player that I think can fully dominate this game and make a huge difference. And then KS Board's official men's basketball record tracker 3-0 asked, "What is UK's key to victory versus Louisville other than just scoring more points?"
First of all, I'm looking forward to see that name change every other day,
Yeah.
and I hope that O stays O. But
Mhm.
Katie, keys to the game, which actually we were just about to get to this, so I think this is a great segue. Keys to the game, I would say, from my talks to people who have been around ACC basketball, and just me remembering from what I've seen with Louisville, they love being up in your grill on defense, and they love to be a headache. They love to be annoying in the way that they're just a hard nosed. Jeff Walls is an excellent coach, and I think he's as great as he is coaching. Just in general, I think he's like just a really great defensive coach. It's just going to be interesting, Georgia Amore and the guards. Can they get around the press? Can they get around Louisville's guards?
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, this is a heated rivalry. Kentucky and Louisville has been rivalry for decades, and this game is very important, I think, to for Kentucky players to feel prideful in their team, which I know that they do, but to just kind of over exaggerate that. I kind of feel like this game is going to be, I said this in the rapid reaction, I think it's going to be snippy. I think there's going to be a lot of tension. And so I'm hoping that Kentucky can kind of play into that and almost intimidate Louisville in a way that they haven't seen yet.
Katie, if I were to ask you, because I just kind of gave my key to the game, talking about how the guards have to come ready to play. What would be your one big key to the game?
I think that I feel like I'm gonna just have to go with good. Okay, I'm gonna say a couple of different things.
Okay.
For one, I feel like ball movement has to be very clean. We cannot have any kind of random bounce passes that can easily be intercepted. Um, I think that being able to read the defense at all times is going to also be very important because Louisville is very sneaky. If you take your eyes off of them for 1 second and try to pass it to Claire Strack in the post, someone might be right in the middle of it grabbing the ball. So I just think that you have to pay attention to ball movement and you have to pay attention to where the defense is on the floor at all times.
And then, something else that I like to think about. Basically, this entire coaching staff, I think, really just outside of Sierra Gregory, came from the SEC. You have, of course, Virginia Tech across the board, and you have Josh Peterson, who came from Miami. You have Claire Strack, Georgia Amore, and Tiani Key, who, of course, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina, who came from the ACC. This team is really, as like as new and as maybe unfamiliar as this team may be to start the season with each other. I think all those names I just mentioned come together, put together a really good scout for this Louisville game, and I think that's a huge advantage for Kentucky this year.
And I mean, you know that they have been dissecting that Louisville UCLA footage like insanely in depth. And I think that they're going to be looking at exactly what Louisville did wrong, but what did UCLA do to contain Louisville and how did they create those mistakes? I feel like this week is going to be a lot of let's study film and let's make sure that we know exactly what we need to do instead of just going into this game with a plan and hoping that it works out.
Now, Katie, as we're wrapping up, I just want to ask you. I think we're both going to be pretty optimistic here and say Kentucky wins. Would you say so?
I would hope so.
You would hope so. That's good enough. Heading into, just predicting the outcome of Saturday's game, who is your MVP and why?
I just feel like we haven't seen a big game from Georgia yet, and I'm ready for it to happen. And I feel like Saturday could be her day since she's familiar with Louisville. And I mean, like I said, she hasn't had a big game yet. She hasn't had a big scoring game. So I think that Louisville Saturday might be her day.
You know what? I like to be contrarian a lot. Not going to be this time. I'm going to say Georgia Amore. She comes out. She proves why she was an All-American point guard last season. And, Katie, she's going to come out and have a really big game. And now, I think I told you before the show, may have said it during the show. We need people there at the game Saturday, right? And here's my thing. Saturday, Saturday is a great thing because at 1:30, you have Kentucky football versus Murray State. Now, you are never going to hear me say go to one game over the other. I say try to go to both. And now Kentucky football, I know the results haven't been great this season. I've talked to a decent number of people who told me they're going to the women's basketball game Saturday instead of the Murray State football game, whatever. But I say that because, Katie, for one, if you are going to the Murray State football game on Saturday, there is enough time between the end of that game and the UK Louisville game to get your butt inside of Historic Memorial Coliseum. There, if you are one of the ones that, let's say, like, for example, one of the people that told me you're not going to the Murray State football game on Saturday anymore because of whatever. What are you doing on Saturday that's better than going to Kentucky Louisville top 20 matchup in Historic Memorial Coliseum? Katie, Kentucky is not going to beat Louisville unless it is a rowdy ruckus environment. This is going to have to be, Kenny Brooks said, this offseason he talked a lot about if it wasn't for Historic Memorial Coliseum, I probably wouldn't even came here. Or not even probably, he just straight up would not have come here.
Mm-hmm.
We have to see its potential in full flesh on Saturday, 6 p.m. It's got to be a huge game, huge environment. And listen, this is a really talented Louisville team. I know they're ranked number 18, but they played really well against number 5 UCLA. I personally think this is a Louisville team that potentially has top 10 talent in all the country. So this is a really good game in general, rivalry game, first huge game of the Kenny Brooks era. Katie, people, I think there's already a buzz around Kentucky basketball, men's and women's basketball, fortunately. But Katie, Saturday needs to be a huge monumental night, huge monumental environment if Kentucky's going to pull out this upset.
Oh, yeah, for sure, especially because UK built this new Memorial Coliseum for you guys to go sit in the air conditioning and have a great environment to go watch some good basketball. So I think that, like he said, if you are going to the game, you have time to make it to Memorial. If you're not going to the game, what other things do you have to do besides going to watch a really good basketball game? And the concession stands are really good. There's a host, and we've been seeing a lot of really entertaining halftime specials. So there's just a few things to convince you to come to the game, especially because Kentucky won't win without you.
And, if that's not enough to sell you, Kaylin Carroll commits to Kentucky today. You have, 2 top 20 teams, rivalry game. Vibes around Kentucky women's basketball, Katie. I'm not going to say they're at the highest they've ever been because I haven't been around I wasn't around during the 1980s when Valerie Still and Patty Jo Hedges were winning us an SEC title. I didn't really cover the team back in 2022 when Kyra Elsie led us to the SEC tournament title. But Katie, just the energy and the juice around this program, pun intended, it's historic. It's just, there's no reason why the seats at Historic Memorial Coliseum shouldn't be filled.
Yeah, definitely, because we haven't been seeing, especially last night, the attendance was probably the worst of what we have seen so far. And I think that energy in the stadium makes such a big difference no matter what sport you're playing. So if you have nothing to do, please. Tickets are not expensive. They're very affordable. And if you're already in Lexington, it's free for students. Don't forget to go claim your ticket through UK Athletics and come and have fun at the game.
That's the main thing. That is the main. It's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome, and hopefully we have a win. Katie, just to wrap things up, do you have any last thoughts before we get out here? Because, it's been a great day, but we have a game to look forward to now.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm just looking forward to Saturday.
There we go. So I'm Phoenix Stevens. This is Katie Hutchison. Episode 5 now, wrapping up here of the Memorial Memo. Katie, great episode, and we will talk to you all later.